it's so hard because like when you talk about being sexually progressive or what's like the other political one that goes around that's like sex positivity.
Hmm.
When you talk about those now kind of have a tainted um, tone to them. So you're like, oh, okay, because we've gone way too far, and now we want everyone to be this sexual deviant. We want everyone to stop getting married and stop having kids. So we can't use those terms anymore. But I guess where is that healthy balance? Because when we were talking about education a little bit earlier on and how there's these schools that take the abstinence approach, both extremes exist, right? You also have
Hmm.
schools that in my opinion, introduce inappropriate content for children when it comes to sexual education. I fully believe in sex ed 100%. I do wish and hope that it was like mostly the parents doing it, but I am aware that not every parent does that.
Hmm.
So then you have to teeter this line of like, well, who says whose right it is to teach your kid?
Right.
That's a whole other bucket of worms to get into. But I do wonder like where's that happy medium of like sex positivity and sex education?
Yeah. So I have an answer for you, and I think it's a good answer. I do like to point out that the Netherlands is a good example around sex education. They
Mhm.
actually start sex education around age 5 and 7. And at the ages, and you can go on YouTube and Google like Dutch sex education videos, and you'll see these videos where they are showing kids full nude bodies. Now they're not erect, they're not aroused, they're not having sex. It's not porn per se, but at a young age, they are showing children what naked human bodies look like and that
Uh-huh.
there's a diversity of it, right?
Mhm.
Societies like the Netherlands, societies like Japan, Scandinavia, places where they have accepted social nudity, and it's not a sexual thing. It's just being naked in the tub or naked on the beach, whatever. Those countries, those societies have lower rates of body image disorders in teenage girls because they grew up realizing that there's a diversity of body types and I don't have to look just like the women on Glamour magazine or Cosmo, right? That's cool.
Mhm.
The Netherlands has lower rates of sexually transmitted infections, lower rates of teen pregnancy, and lower rates of sexual assault than the United States because they start talking about sex and they make it so that sex isn't a secret. Because
Mhm.
one of the things that happens in our society is, kids get sexually abused, women get sexually assaulted, and they're afraid that it's partially their fault.
Mhm.
And they're afraid to say anything about it because they're going to get told it was their fault or that they're going to be slut shamed or blamed. Um, Talking about these issues, and going back to what I was saying a minute ago, talking about these issues actually doesn't make them happen, but increases our ability to talk about these issues. Um, so then, how do we move? How do we talk about it then? Historically, sex education has worked from a model, what's called an act-based model of sexual health. So that's as a therapist, right? As a psychologist, I want to help my patients be healthy. So then, what does sexual health mean? Historically, we judged sexual health by what it was. Heterosex was healthy, homosex was unhealthy. Sex within marriage was healthy, sex outside marriage was unhealthy. Um, Now we have to recognize that it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Because now we realize that there's lots of homosexual people and that are having healthy sex. So, okay, so we have to change that. So, what do we change it to? The World Health Organization has embraced a model, and this is a model that's been adopted worldwide, um, uh, where it's a principle based model of sexual health. So instead of saying healthy sex is what you do, instead we start asking questions about how you do it. So, What are the components then? What are the principles that we would want to teach people about how to be healthy in a sexual way? Consent, honesty, safety in terms of potential infections or pregnancy, pleasure, because we have to talk about pleasure. We can't, people, the number one reason people have sex is for pleasure. So we have to pay attention to that. We also have to pay attention to mutuality, that for us to have a healthy sexual relationship, it has to be mutual. It can't be all about me or all about you. And then lastly, we have to pay attention to exploitation. That if one person is exploiting the other person, that's not healthy. So the story I tell often is, as an example of this is, imagine if we were at a hotel bar and we met and we hit it off, and I said, I've really been looking for a long-term relationship, and you and I are really hitting it off. I think we could really have an amazing, partnership and relationship. And then we go up to my hotel room. We have crazy hot sex. I mean, there's orgasms splattered on the ceiling. We are just having a great time. But the next morning, I don't call you
Mhm.
because I was lying. I didn't really want a long-term relationship, but I knew you did. It might have been really pleasurable, hot sex, but it's not healthy because I wasn't honest and I was exploiting you. So instead of trying to change what people do sexually, in therapy, I instead try to work with them about, is there a healthy way you could engage in this behavior? Is there a healthy way you could fulfill this desire? Instead of engaging in infidelity, what would it be like to talk to your partner about exploring an open relationship? Can we do this in an ethical way? That's how I think we start changing the conversation. And we start, in Boston, there's a psychologist named Emily Rothman who has a lovely model that she has developed about a porn literacy curriculum. And it teaches adolescents what porn is and isn't. It teaches adolescents what they can learn from porn and what they shouldn't learn from porn. The sad thing is that research now shows that adolescents who watch pornography and think that it is realistic are the ones who are most likely to learn unhealthy lessons from porn. They're the ones who choke their partner without asking. They're the ones who try to have anal sex without preparation or consent. Um, because they saw that in pornography and they thought that's how real sex is. So we need to teach people about what healthy sex is by having the conversations. We don't let kids learn to drive by watching Fast and the Furious. If we don't want kids to learn unhealthy lessons about sex from porn, and if we want kids and people in our society to have healthy sex, for the love of God, we've got to start talking about what it is.
No, you nailed that. Absolutely nailed that, because a lot of the conversation is that it's the industry's responsibility to somehow let your child know that this isn't real. And first of all, your child shouldn't be anywhere near that content. So like where are your safety measures on your end too, right? It's your kid and
Mhm.
that's your duty to protect your child and no one else's in any realm. But I think that the buck should be stopping with the parents. It's like, if you don't want your kids to come across this material, because they will at some point, whether it's like their friend's phone or someone's laptop is left out, like it's unavoidable, unfortunately, in today's world as the internet exists as it is. So you have to have these conversations and be like, listen, if you come across this material, if a friend shows it to you, like I would like you to not watch it until you are of age, but if you end up watching it, know that this is not real. This is for adults. It's meant to be entertainment for adults, and you should not be taking any of this and applying it to another person. So it's uncomfortable for sure, but I mean, I'm part Japanese. And I also grew up with like this a lot of naked adult bodies around me. It was very normal and like of all ages. Like you would see 80-year-olds walking around naked, especially at the bathhouses and all of that. And it was just normal to me. I didn't think
Yeah.
anything otherwise. Again, it wasn't like in a sexual way. So I have always kind of looked at naked bodies a little bit differently. Like it wasn't this crazy thing that had to be riddled with shame. And then my dad was also a cop. So we had the conversation about sex and inappropriate touching when I was like 3, like
Yeah.
super early. It's like one of my first memories, which sounds crazy to some people, but he saw some horrific things happening all the time. When he was clocked in, he's like, not my kid. And how do you protect your kid? You protect your kid with competence. So you
Yeah.
have to tell them that, the world out there is not always unicorns and fairy dust. And some people will try to hurt you. And this is what it looks like. And it's not your fault. And you absolutely go to an adult. Like you always come to me or your mom if something happens. But if you want to put your head in the sand and pretend that like they're too young to have those conversations, you're actually putting them at risk.
Absolutely. Good job, Dad. Way to go, Candace's dad. Rock on. There's a book I ran across recently. I highly recommend it to every family I talk to. It's called My Voice Is My Superpower. And it is exactly the lesson that you just got from your dad. It is, first, it's a book with children of color, which is gorgeous, and then it is kids being taught that you know their body is their body, and if somebody touches them, that they should say something and use their superpower, their voice,
Mm-hmm.
to say no and to get help, and that
Yep.
it's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important for people to have that discussion and have that, give kids that power, because that's how we protect them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just sex. It's and I tell parents that they need to prepare their kids to encounter all kinds of uncomfortable stuff online, not just sex, but you know, videos of people dying, videos
Yeah.
of people being beheaded. Um, and for the love of God, we need to prepare kids to be attacked by all of the mean, nasty people that hide online and just want to be awful to each other.
Yeah.
So what I tell parents is, you've got to tell your kid that there are things online that they're going to encounter that are going to make them feel bad and confused and complicated and scared and all kinds of weird feelings. And when that happens, it's not your fault. Come to me and we can talk about it, and you're not going to get in trouble. That's a
Right.
really important thing, because when the kid comes to you and says, "Oh, I ran into this stuff," and then the parent punishes them,
Right.
the kid's never going to come ask for help again.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a choice. You can abandon kids to this frightening, scary world that we live in, or we can put on our big boy panties and talk with them about how to survive in this world and how to be safe, and to let them know they're not alone. Most kids want to be like their parents. They view their parents as where they came from, and they want to be like them. They want to understand your values. I unfortunately see lots of parents who are scared to talk to their kids about sex because they're scared of their own sexuality, or they're scared that somebody's going to think that that's, sexual abuse of some kind, or misunderstand it. They're scared that if they talk to their kids about sex, their kids are going to go have sex. But if you talk to your kids about your sexual values, they start learning about themselves from that.